Rock and roll. Kia ora, everybody. What's up? It is Robett. Welcome to Robett Live. Joined from the bro, Rob Campbell. How are you, mate?
Hey, Brett. Robert, I'm good. I'm good.
Let's talk about this. The beard's coming on strong. I know why. Tell the people why. You had two options. Go on.
Well, I had these options. I trained with these renegades at BBM, and I was offered the option of shaving my head or growing a beard, and I'm still happy I took the right choice.
Yeah, I was
I,
saying if I had options to grow it back, I'd grow. I'd grow. It's not even
yeah.
half the reason we have. It'd be cool if I could just grow hair again. I could at least have like fringe or something. You've got options there. It's flipping sweet.
Well, yeah. And fortunately, the grey streaks haven't grown out yet.
Do you know, true story, my first grey hair I ever found was on my honeymoon with wifey like 9 years, 8 years ago. 9 years ago.
I'm not going.
Whatever.
I'm not going to ask you where it was.
No, no, it was stuff you wrong. It was right here on the side, and I saved it and took it. What a way to start the interview. All right, let's go. Are you in Ponsonby? Where are you? Wifey home, safe, good.
Ponsonby, yep.
Yep,
Ponsonby at home, safe and well, yep.
good, good. How I've talked to a few CEOs. Every single person that I've talked to that's been a part of some type of board discussion, it's been very clear that boards have gone absolute batshit crazy in terms of communication and back and forth with the big decisions that need to be happening to the business. How gnarly is your email inbox and your text messages and your phone calls over the last month?
Oh, I get a pretty steady flow anyway in that way. So I don't know that that's changed a heck of a lot, really. We've spent a lot more time between me and chief executives in the various businesses I'm engaged with, talking about immediate issues than you normally would. And we've had a hell of a lot more board calls,
Yeah.
Zoom and Skype and whichever other brand you're advertising today, Robert. We've been on them, and that's actually been quite good. I mean, interestingly, if you go back a few years, we would not have been nearly as well prepared for this as businesses now are. Most businesses do have crisis plans which swing into action and have communication structures that are pretty effective. So I'm pretty impressed by the way the management teams I work with have dealt with it.
The the you've seen money circulate, you've understood commerce, politics, government, all that sort of stuff. Have you seen ever a moment similar to this where across end to end, north to south, and globally at this level outside of a recession or depression, that it's been a straight pause, if not stop? And when you saw it coming and you knew that it was going to happen, what was the first things that popped into your mind?
I've certainly never seen a stop like this across so many of the economies in the world at one time. So that is certainly unique to my memory, at least, and I'm pretty sure it will be unique as a global event. Whether this is any deeper or more far-reaching than some other events, I think it's a little bit early to tell. There's a famous story that usually gets attributed to the ex-Chinese Prime Minister Zhou Enlai, who was a Marxist, obviously, and he was asked what he thought the influence of the French Revolution on world history had been, and his answer was, "It's too early to tell." And if he was right about the French Revolution, I think we've got to be careful not to jump to judgments in the middle of this crisis about what it will do. I've been in some discussions in the last few days where people say everything's going to be new, nothing's going to be the same. Um, well, maybe. I actually think that you can sometimes overestimate how radical those changes are going to be. The old distribution of power hasn't changed yet, and it will try to reassert itself, in my view. Whether it succeeds is another thing, but how big this changes, too early to tell, in my opinion.
Well, I think the fundamental organizational structures of being able to, I guess, forced into the cloud, forced into remote work, forced into digital communications for every touch point of a business. That's a seismic shift in operations, but fundamentally there's still CEOs and boards and, you know, chairs of the boards and whatever. So I think that part hasn't changed. Is the talk points of people in your circles thinking that those structures would shift, or is it more that, you know, more tech or efficiencies can be brought in with innovation to the businesses? What's the vibe on that front?
I think there's a danger that tech spend, along with other investment spend, may even reduce, contrary to what a lot of the commentary is. Capital's going to be very constrained for a period of time for most businesses, and we've traditionally reached for the tech budget as one of the things that we can most easily manipulate. I'm not sure that that will necessarily have changed all that much. I think other things about the way we work will have changed. Unfortunately, for many workers, companies will not rush to head back to their previous employment levels. They will take pretty careful steps about that, and I think that even apart from the short-term shock, that job availability is going to be probably quite a bit lower than it has been in New Zealand, at least for quite a considerable period of time. You know, the old unequal power structures are still there, and I really don't think they will change. The way they work might change, but I'm not sure our society is going to change as much as maybe people hope. You know, everyone thinks, oh, this is great, the air's clean and the water's cleaner, and that is true. How committed are we going to be to that? Well, let's see where, you know, the infrastructure money is spent. Will it be spent on roads and motorways and bridges and things like that, or will it be spent on underpinning the shift to clean energy? That'll be a crucial issue for New Zealand. As I say, I think the opportunities for that will be that the danger will be that we will have this desire to return to some kind of normalcy. I hate the word, but some kind of normality, some kind of reassurance, some kind of conservatism, that people's taste for risk, taste for expenditure, taste for spending disposable income, taste for investment will all have been reduced a bit. And so we could be in for quite a slow economic time and potentially even a reversionary social time.
So on that, the employment thing's interesting, right? So I think last week, I think the numbers came out on, I think it was Tuesday, it was like 3.3 million unemployment. This last week it hit 6 million, on track for pretty gnarly records. The jump back for New Zealand in terms of different industries that have been affected overnight, obviously hospitality, tourism, where do you think unemployment will sit in a month's time? Way worse than this, or do you think if we get back in the next 4 weeks, it'll be a slow start build back? Obviously, coming back into it. Where do you think this is how this will play out?
Well, unfortunately, I think it has to get worse because there will be a high degree of uncertainty around, and demand will still be reasonably low. And for tourism businesses, it will be so nearly nil. It doesn't matter. And at the moment, many people do not appear as unemployed because they're on the government wage subsidy in one form or another. That won't run forever, I'm assuming. Maybe it will, but I don't think it will.
It's not
When
EBI
that
just
comes,
yet.
well, I don't think so, but maybe it will. So I would expect unemployment numbers to go up as we come out of the lockdown rather than down.
When Oh shit, because you're chair of THL as well, right? What's the vibe in the tourism world with how they'll pivot to this new potential world? What's the energy in the tourism sector of how they think they'll rebound, readdress, redesign, reimagine, reframe, relook, replan everything around tourism for New Zealand? What's the thinking? Hyperlocal?
Well, yeah, look, it's a body blow for tourism, which is, you know, substantively international tourism, and many businesses in the sector have had their current income reduced to zero, and even their future income reduced substantially if the border controls remain on, as seems highly likely. So, there are many businesses in tourism who will go out of business without question. Um, Particularly with winter coming on, it's a pretty hard time to try and get any kind of turnaround, and many people will make the decision that they simply can't continue. I think other businesses will be cutting down to what they think is a sustainable level in the new environment, uh, which is substantially smaller than we ever were. Possibly by half or smaller than they previous were, just because the numbers won't be there.
Mm.
Uh, and hope to live another day if tourism grows again, which if it does grow back to the previous levels, it will only get there quite slowly, I think. So there is quite a lot of talk going on in tourism circles about what the future of the New Zealand tourist industry looks like. It's even got a name, Tourism 2.0.
There you go. I
It's,
knew that
it,
someone would brand it. Someone would brand
it
it.
was it was it wasn't me, but it's a way to think about it, and
Yep.
it makes sense, and good that people are doing that. Um, but again, we all want to reframe the tourism industry to suit our own businesses to the extent that we can. But there will need to be some more cooperation. There will need to be uh, some consolidation within the industry.
I was just about to get to that. In different other verticals right now, there has been a lot of talk in the circles and the back circles around um, roll ups, just buying distressed assets, pulling it in, taking client databases, pulling their infrastructure on top of it to create efficiencies, yada yada yada. Do you think the same will happen within tourism at a big scale, where a couple of big players, either like yourselves or a bunch of these other crew, will be like, we need this, or these things drop off. We've got the cash flow to be able to get through this next little bit, even if we just run at a loss to keep local rolling until international pops back up. Do you think there will be big acquisition plays in different verticals, and if so, what verticals?
Well, look, talking specifically about the kind of tourism sector, I don't think anyone's got the kind of cash flows that will enable them to be big initiators of roll-ups. It is possible that fund managers or private equity or other people will try and buy assets when they're relatively cheap and do something about them. I'm aware of some interest around the market of that kind. But you've still got to run these things. It's one thing to buy them on paper.
Yeah.
It's another to deal with what the market is actually like and what the pretty specialist skills are actually like that you need to run those things. So, look, it's more attractive on paper than it is in practice. I think most people in the industry have had a bit of a look around and thought,
Yeah.
am I predator or prey? And
Exactly.
if so, how does it look? Well, it looks pretty complicated and difficult, is the short answer. So, again, I don't think there'll be I don't expect any particularly radical moves in that direction. But we are going to see a lot of people folding up their tent and going.
Yeah. I was talking to someone a while ago, and then really recently around the media space for this exact thing. Obviously, Bauer went under. I think NZME was saying today 15% off, staffing redundancies, and gave the description of, they were like, yeah, it's like 5 different vultures all circling, trying to figure out who the prey is, just going around in circles. And I was like, I get it, because they don't know who's stuffed of what's going to happen next. But yeah, I know within the media landscape, there's obviously chats like that. In the food and beverage hospitality sector, there's banter around that. Real estate is another one where I know there's people
Yeah.
in conversations around that sort of side of things. We've got a couple of questions. Here we go. We'll jump into it. Joy Miller says, Kia ora, what about the impact of likely reduction in travel and incoming tourists? Well, imagine with the border controls, if it's zero, the answer is going to be zero, right?
Well, it will get to zero. Yeah, I mean, it's effectively zero at the moment, and it's likely to remain that way from an international point of view at some time.
Yeah.
There is some discussion at a government level as to whether there might be an earlier opening of the Australasian market of
Yeah,
both
the APEC
Australia and New
bubble.
Zealand get on touch. And a lot of New Zealand international tourism comes out of Australia, and a smaller amount of Australian tourism comes out of New Zealand. So look, it's possible to be a bit more optimistic about the Australasian market, but I think it will be quite some time before we see anything like the free flow of tourism that we had before. So businesses like Tourism Holdings, which the camper van part of the business had a substantial overseas component, very substantial overseas component that is gone. We're going to be a much smaller business. Waitomo Caves, which is one of our businesses that we manage with the local hapu, a large part of that business there was a very large Chinese tourist trade there, which is gone. So Waitomo Caves are not going anywhere. New Zealanders will still visit them, but the business surrounding it will be a substantially smaller business.
How does it? What are those? What are those chats like to be on a phone call when you're literally talking about losing millions and millions of dollars to almost zero? Like, how does everyone approach that on a call? Is it kind of like, well, zero? Like, how does that, like, talk me
Mm.
through how those chats go when either CEO is reporting to the board or every single of us understands it. It's flipping gnarly. You're talking about like hundreds of jobs, if not thousands of jobs and millions of dollars. Like the weight of that is so gnarly on something you can't even control. Like how do you even navigate that as a leader, right? It's stuffed.
Yeah, there's actually in my experience, which goes back a fair while now, there's a strange metallic taste to the stress that you feel when those kind of events occur. It just is, there's an extreme chemical reaction going on in your body when something as existential as the revenue you had is gone. What are you going to do? I think pretty quickly after that, some adrenaline hopefully kicks in. Uh, if you're up for the job, that's what happens, and you get on with framing the decisions and making the decisions you need to make. And then, almost inevitably, in those situations, there are job losses that follow, and you have to take decisions that you would much rather not be taking, whether they're people that you know face to face and see every day, or people that you've never met in another part of the world. You realise that there are those are not just numbers; they're real people with real whānau, and that they will be enormously affected. And
Mm.
I think we would all feel distressed about that, even though the rational part of your brain says this has to be done. And when you became a director, when you walked into the board the first time, you weren't thinking what happens if this thing goes tits
No,
up.
yeah,
You were thinking much more positive thoughts about it.
yeah,
When you are having the thought in your head, wow, what happens if this goes tits up? It is a big change in how you think about the business, but you signed up for that. You signed up to make decisions which were in the best interests of the company, which were in the best interests of the various stakeholders to whom you have responsibility. So you make that decision, but you walk home feeling sick about it. That's the fact.
yeah. It's always that the heavy lies the crown. Heavy lies the crown. That weight, that privilege, that responsibility, that weight. I had a friend of mine. He's in the tourism space, and big company's done well. He's got about 200 staff, and he messaged me last night. He's going down to 10 from
Mm.
200, right? And then I was like, damn. You think about that, and you think about this leadership of how they're all doing. And obviously, you sit on a bunch of these boards and a bunch of different leaders that you've seen across this time. In this last 4 weeks, what's the single dopest thing you've seen a leader do? What's the biggest single most impressive bit of leadership, yeah, you've seen in or outside of your business in the last 4 weeks? Something specific that you're like, that is what a leader is. You don't need to say or whatever, but just like who it is or whatever. But just like what's something that made you proud to see them as a leader? That
Um, yeah, one of the chief executives that I work with had an immediate response, which was that he needed to go out of the room. And I know that he went and cried about what he was about to do, um, and steadied himself. He told me afterwards and came back into the room and did made the decisions and made the announcements that he needed to make. And when we talked about it afterwards, that was just he knew that he had to let off the stress and that he had to be a strong leader for uh, for the people who were not leading.
Yeah.
Because straight after that, he still had to have
Rally the
their
troops. Yeah.
confidence and to lead people through what was still going to be, even for the people that remained, a very difficult situation. And it just brought home that human element. But, having said all that, if those of us that have these jobs, we do get paid better than the average worker in the company, and we do get other rewards, psychic rewards of various kinds from being in leadership positions. And just sometimes you realise that there are some bad bits of it too. But there's no reason why anyone else should feel sorry about that. I think it's just useful for people to recognise that these feelings do run through it. And if I cast myself back to the 1980s, which I can, and I think you might struggle. You might
I
struggle a
still had
bit.
diapers on and shit, but I was still crazy then, but probably just didn't know. I probably know as much as I do
Uh,
now, but to be fair, but yeah, go on.
but in the late 1980s crash, people were human just like they are now. But I think that nowadays the leadership of the businesses I've been associated with have had a much deeper way of thinking about things and a much more a degree of social resonance about what they were doing and recognizing the people aspects of what they were doing than did exist some decades ago. So I think our business community has evolved positively in that respect.
You're thinking leaders have become more human.
I think they've become a better sort of human than perhaps they were in that sort of archetypical Wall Street kind of
Yeah, rah rah shit.
era. Yeah, I think a lot of that has gone along with the suspender belts, fortunately. Those
Were you rolling
those
some?
no, no, not the
Yes.
other. The
No,
suspender belts is the wrong thing, isn't it? It's
yeah,
those things. Yeah,
the hockey. I know what you're talking about. It's just, I know what you're
yeah.
talking about. I know. What you're talking about. Says such a boss, real talk, but weirdly comforting to see such manner and experience on display. As leaders, you make that decision to sign up and make the tough calls in the best interest of the shareholders and business in reference to that metallic taste. Yep, fair call. Question: can you please ask Rob what impact he sees on the retirement industry as he is the chair of Somerset? Oh, that's right. Yeah, you got that on as well. So how's what's happening with tourism? How's the retirement game? Because obviously that's a danger, hygiene standards, safety, all the rest of it. What's the banter in that world?
Well, Frank, there's not a lot of banter actually at the moment.
Banter, I
The
guess.
the the, the issues are different there. So we're expanding staff rather than decreasing staff. The demand for aged care services just rolls on. So and we need more people there because the standards of care have had to be lifted a reasonable amount, as well as security on our villages and all those sorts of things. So the real issue there is how do we ensure that the people who are living in our facilities are safe and secure, and how do we ensure that our staff who are in the front line of caring for very frail people in many instances that they're protected too. So we had a board call today, just this afternoon, of the Somerset board and with management talking about our the latest news coming out, not from our villages or care centres at this stage, but other people in the industry, just checking that our teams were all right, that our procedures were as strong as we thought they should be. checking on the latest clinical information. So all the emphasis there at the moment is on care. Um, and so far we're doing okay, but it is a very vulnerable sector to this particular virus.
I was just thinking as well because you're also are you still chair of precinct as well
I don't chair precinct. I'm on the board there
on the
though.
board?
Yeah.
So, say within tourism, I mean within real estate, what's the main thinking or talk been about concerns or opportunities in the it's more the commercial side, right? On the commercial side, what's the feeling in that sector?
I'm not sure I'm competent to talk about the sector as a whole, but the immediate concerns are obviously about people being able to or willing to pay their leases, and obviously a commercial property owner has costs too. So making arrangements virtually lease by lease with people for how they will get access, when they'll get access, what the financial implications of that are, is obviously very important. Our development projects are stopped at the present time, so that's another kind of issue to be managed. I think the what tends to happen when these shocks run through is that the greatest pain is felt uh, in the smaller commercial, smaller retail businesses. So in prime grade commercial property, the banks, the lawyers, the accountants, the government departments are still going okay. I'm not saying they're having a good time, but they're all very busy and active. So the tenancies at that level tend to be a lot more stable than someone on a suburban high street owning a one or two story building where things might be more difficult. So I think that it is in those secondary levels that you'll feel the first impact. There may be some valuation impact because you would expect discount rates to change a bit as interest rates pop around and risk levels perceived to increase. But that's the main impact there. But there will certainly be some secondary commercial businesses, property owning businesses, potentially some retail shopping property interests, and potentially some residential property interests that will come under a fair bit of stress.
I was gonna ask. Usually, most people are stressed enough being the CEO of one organisation or being on the board of one. How do you manage your headspace shifting between different verticals like tourism, retirement homes, property, flipping all this other shit that you're doing? Like, how does your headspace wear those different hats to the needs of each of those different sectors? Like, how do you do it?
Well, it may not look that it's succeeding, but it's what keeps me younger a bit.
Mate, the beard's
Keeping
strong. The beard's solid. It's
keeps
strong.
keeps my mind pretty active, and I find that each of the things I'm involved in helps the other. So that in some instances I'm a tenant, in other cases I'm a landlord.
Mm.
In some instances I'm a supplier, in other instances I'm some different kind of role in the industry. So I think they all complement each other. I haven't yet gotten to the middle of the meeting and discovered I was in the wrong one. I think if that happens, it's probably time I hand my card in to the directors union.
Yeah, I can imagine your flipping your potential conflicts on each like board papers must just be like, oh yeah, classic. Rob's on this one now. Henri says, Rob, it's called braces. Cheers, Henri.
Oh,
Thanks,
those are the
Henri.
ones.
Braces.
I thought you had braces on your teeth.
Yeah, no, I get it. As one day just to ball out, I think I should go straight 50s and roll some braces. Tom Lacour says, what about people roll-ups with big government projects rolling out to pump money into New Zealand? Do you think that the money will go to the big players? If so, will this end the little guy? Good call. Good question.
Yeah, look, there's no question that there's a tendency for these big bailouts, and the United States in the GFC was a classic example of that, where the big end of town really ate the bailouts, didn't it? And that's now been well documented. And it's true that the big end of town does tend to have the lobbying power and the influence at governmental level to secure
Or
preferred access to
trust for execution of services, right?
all those things. So, I mean, it will happen, and there will be the majority of those benefits will flow through the major players in each industry. It's a matter of how much of that sticks. And I've never been a great advocate of the trickle down theory. It's another version of that, isn't it? That if you give money at the top, it will trickle down to people at the bottom. It's always seemed to me that that was a theory that appealed a lot more to the person who was doing the trickling than to the person
Yeah.
who was being trickled upon. But it is kind of how it works. And yeah, look, realistically, the big end of town will take a big chunk of what is available in terms of this support payment.
So on that, one of the things that has been talked about in a few different verticals or industries that I've been talking to is this idea of opportunities for small businesses to collectively roll up together instead of getting the big crews. If you were in the smaller end of town and looking, say, if you're either one of these big government projects or just survival or whatever it may be, as a strategy, how does that stack up? And then if you were to try and go ahead with it, what you should potentially look out for if you're looking at maybe a SME roll up to try and have a bit more power and horsepower to try and either fight through or thrive on the other side. How would you approach it?
Well, in New Zealand, it's not a hopeless case, despite what I just said about the big end of town grabbing the most. I think if you have a viable project, either yours or one that you share with a group of people, the energy is is well spent. Contacting through local MPs, going straight. In New Zealand, we can still access government ministers reasonably easily. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not
they're all on
that
the
easy,
gram,
but
mate.
you
Just slide into
you
the DMs. That's what you
you
do.
can you can contact these people, and they are looking for answers at the moment. Local mayors and councillors, the same, and I think there is a desire at that level to help small and medium businesses to achieve these things. So I would say don't despair, although the tendency will be for the big end of town to grab the lion's share. I think that reasonable proposals that are being developed by small businesses and medium businesses do have a show of getting access. I'm aware of other people who have quite small businesses who have successfully got into some of these streams of support that are around at the moment and are doing okay. So, give it a whirl.
Yep.
Give it a whirl.
Um, Question come in. Are you seeing companies going on the offense or defense in these uncertain times? Is it sector specific? For me, defense is waiting and seeing how it all plays out versus is getting ahead, innovating, or trying something new in uncertain times. Offense versus defense. What are you seeing? What are your thoughts? Good
I
question.
think while we're in this stage of the lockdown, it's just a fact that everyone's mainly in defensive mode or perhaps plotting and planning to move into a more positive mode. Defence, and once we start to open up, defence won't help you. It's not going to go back to where it was. So simply just hoping that the business will come back is absolutely a philosophy of despair. So I'd really urge anybody who is in that situation to use this time when you can't do much about it, and it might not, and hopefully doesn't last for too much longer, to really be positive about the first steps that you make, because how you are perceived in the market, how you're perceived by your staff, how you're perceived by your customers and your competitors is going to be shaped up pretty quick from the point of time that you can open again. So hit the ground running and do be prepared to make changes, accept that the market won't be the same as it was, and certainly be positive. You're not going to defend your way out of this. It's
Yeah.
just not possible.
Yeah. Hashtag offense. He says. Um, do you think this moment in time is exposed bad leadership?
I think our leadership generally, both politically and at a community level
Mm.
and at a business level, has been pretty good. Robert
I was meaning for
is my view.
business was some of
Uh,
like sorry, context. Some leaders, now that they've gone virtual with how they've operated, because they haven't been able to hide through anything, have had to, it's
mm.
so transparent, and you can see everything through it, and everyone's talking. These tribes are sort of collating out of it. So it feels like there's some leaders which are creating glue within organizations, and some which are exposing themselves to bad leadership and stuff. I was more within the business context, but yeah, go for it.
Oh, right. Yeah, so certainly in the business context, again, I'd still say I think it's been overall pretty good, but it
Mm.
does expose, I think it has exposed business leaders who are comfortable and sincere in their communication from those who are not. I think if you're one of those business leaders who feels the need to read off a script written by someone else in communicating with your stakeholders, then you're in real trouble.
Yeah.
But so that fortunately, I think most of our business leaders, have done a really good job so far.
Have you think the government's done in terms of, if you were grading the government, what would you give it for, maybe not for employees and then employers? How have you think we've done?
Look, I think in the short term, everyone is making it up as they go along,
Yeah.
and the New Zealand government administration and politicians have done, remarkably well. So the real test will be in terms of how they manage coming out of this lockdown, how they manage what I think will be quite a long-term fight about this virus. I don't think it goes away all that quickly, and how they manage to restore social confidence. We'll hear a lot of talk about business confidence because we publish all these surveys about it, and you know, I'm never sure I've got a great deal of confidence in those confidence surveys, but
It's
uh,
PR, mate. It's all the
I,
sprinkles, mate. The sprinkles.
yeah, I do think that the government needs to focus a lot on social confidence going
Mm.
forward. I think the business confidence will come or not come for that, but the real thing is, does the average New Zealander and well, no, let me put it better. Does the diverse New Zealander, does the Pacific Islander living in Manukau feel that this is a good place to live and that they have good opportunities
Mm.
ahead of them for them and their children still? Does the Maori family in Northland feel that the situation has become more hopeless, or do they feel, no, actually, there's some things happening here that I
Hope.
can lock into and do well? Similarly, the farmer in Southland, do they feel, oh, well, gee, this is all hard, but do they feel reasonably confident about what they can do and where they can go? You can run through all those diverse types of New Zealanders, and I think the government has, I'm sure it is, do that in its head and say, how do I assist those people to feel confident?
Mm.
Because that's the way business will get confident.
The
You can
people.
win those business confidence. I mean, I could get business confidence right back up by just announcing a company tax cut in half, cut company tax in half, and the business confidence would go right up. But what would that tell you? Nothing, really. I might get sacked for that, but never mind. I don't think that's the answer. But what is important is social confidence, and business will react and respond to that too.
So let's go there for a second. How those diverse Kiwis who you talk about, they don't sit usually in positions of power or influence, or have the ear of those that do. How do you think government or corporates or councils or whatever it may be of those in power can help restore social confidence to that type of diverse New Zealand? What do they do?
Like, you're getting well out of my area of expertise here, if I have one. But
Sorry, Ron. I'm sure you've had tougher conversations this week than talking shit with me.
um, but I think the first thing that they've got to do is listen and listen to the people in those communities, not necessarily their organised leadership. It's not that hard to uh, get a feel for what New Zealand's a small place. It's not that hard to get a feel for what people in those communities are thinking if you really have open ears and an open mind about it. So learn about their fears and their worries and their concerns, which will be some of them very practical and some quite philosophical. Don't assume they're all simply practical. Some will be intellectual as well, but there'll be immediate practical concerns, and you've got to find a way to deal effectively for those. I think the second thing is that you've got to have those people believe that what you are doing is part of some longer term path that leads somewhere. That it's not simply at the moment. Everyone's I think, probably pretty supportive because it's all happening. There's a real big problem. You're dealing with it. Radical measures take place. There's good support for that. New Zealanders are reacting pretty well to all of that. But that won't last. And pretty quickly, I think you've got to be able to listen to the people, and then articulate a path that will get them to where they would like to be. And I don't think that for most New Zealanders is necessarily all that ambitious. I don't think, for example, you remember we used to care about whether we caught up with Australian living standards or not? Might be before your time, but it used to be a big thing. We even had a committee appointed by the government to work out how to do it. Well, no one's really worrying about those sort of things these days. I think it's down to some quite basic things about the level of social support that people have and the level of respect and recognition that their community is getting.
Yeah.
So I think these politicians, are capable of doing that. Don't see why not.
Well, if you're right in the thinking that leadership is changed with I guess not being better humans or whatever, but seeing more outside of just one lane, it's pretty clear that leadership of those at the top and government level are thinking a little bit differently about those type of things, and I think it's important, right?
I think it is. I mean, look, yes. The biggest thing that we've been able to criticise our leader of the opposition at the moment in the last week or two is getting in a car and driving from Tauranga to Wellington to attend a meeting. Well, relative to what politicians are doing around the world,
yeah,
it's not that bad. It's not. I'm not saying whether he's right or wrong, but it's not that bad. Most New Zealanders can relate to that, and our Prime Minister is talking about when she left. She leaves in the morning, her mum makes her a cup of tea to go and deal with these things. So, we're a pretty simple society. That's the thing that we need to focus on. We don't need to be in the model of these overseas countries where extremities and inequalities are inbuilt. I mean, even take the way this virus has impacted, and I'm very, very happy that so far some of the poorer communities, for example, in South Auckland and Northland, to take those two examples, haven't yet had anything like the impact that they could have. But you look at the African American statistics coming out of the United States, and it's absolutely sickening. I mean, imagine if we had
100,000, it's the worst in the world right now.
It's just horrible, isn't it? And you just think, wow, imagine if we had that in our country and our society. And heaven forbid that you ever do, but let's build on some of that positive stuff that we have here.
Question on the back of, will COVID-19 scare off the next wave of entrepreneurs? How can we help people starting businesses in a post-COVID world? I mean, a lot of people are going to be in a fear-based economy, going to be scared to shit to do anything. Not going to have security, right? What's your take on that?
I think it's a legitimate fear. I think that there will be, the economist in me calls it risk aversity, but fear is just as good a word. It will be around. People won't be willing to take risks for fear that just around the corner is another is another close down.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I think we just have to accept that we will have less people taking risks, but it is a legitimate role for business to support suppliers who are doing innovative things. There will be opportunities for people to do things which may not be world breaking, but are very good alternatives to supply in New Zealand, things that may previously have come from offshore. I'm not saying trade is going to stop, because it's not,
No, no.
but there will be opportunities for domestic activity that maybe weren't as attractive before because we were all trying to conquer a world market.
Mm.
Maybe the entrepreneurialism might shift a little bit, Robett.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting one. Ali says, "Do you think that it's time to reevaluate our economic political policies? Do you think that is a suitable time to think about radical change in terms of how a country should operate going forward?" And he says, following that, an example could be the introduction of a universal basic income or a major tax reformation. Oh, deep questions. You bring back your union days, mate. What are your thoughts there?
Look, you would think so, wouldn't you, at one level, that it's a time to reach out for more radical proposals. And my own political views probably do tend that way. What I think will happen, though, is there will be a degree of that risk aversity, a desire for a return to normalcy, uh, perhaps a lesser taste for radical proposals than there might otherwise have been. So uh,
It's quite interesting, even
I'm
just on
not
that.
I'm not confident we will see any major or
No.
radical leaps in things.
But by force, every business has been, radicalized and transformed digitally, but then by choice afterwards, I don't know if there'll be that same, because if there's that base of fear, I don't know if the speed will be the same for actual the next then what's. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you imagine that there's a lot of people who were answering surveys in 2019 saying things weren't going too well, who in 2020 would be pretty happy to go back to 2019.
Well, they can
So
go to the pub
that's
for a
kind of,
beer. They'll be like, shit,
well,
yeah.
well, that's sort of the reality of it. So, I mean, I think it was Tahir, was it? They're just on the line
Yeah,
asking the
Ali, yeah.
question. I mean, I think, yeah, Ali, yeah, that, uh, you know, there's a good case for that, but I wonder if it's not an intellectual case rather than a gut case.
Hmm. Uh, Henri's back. He said, "What's your view on the share market? Watch, invest a little, or something else in respect to investment strategy." Well, I think
Look,
everything just globally is down right now, except for probably Microsoft Teams stock,
yeah,
Slack stock.
I'm no, yeah, I'm no expert on the share market, and frankly, the share prices of the businesses I'm involved in have been trashed so badly, I'm scared to look at it, Henri.
Just don't say crypto. Whatever you do, just don't say crypto. I know you're a busy man. You got flipping heaps on. I really appreciate your time, brother. When we come out the end of this thing, what's your hope for this new New Zealand after Corona, or what could be potentially the new New Zealand? What do you see when you look out of not only where you've come from, but what you've seen, political power shift and people shift and the opportunities of what New Zealand can do? What's your little gaze you wake up and you're hyped on that you get hope for this country?
Uh, I hope that we can come out of this on a basis that doesn't exacerbate inequality and starts a process whereby we reduce the inequalities that have been evident in our society in recent decades. So that's one thing I hope. I think these are integrated. With that, I do hope that we don't backslide on sustainability, but in fact continue to take steps forward in that respect. In very simple terms, don't regard cheap oil as an opportunity, but regard it as simply, oh yeah, we still want to go over here, sorry.
Mm.
That's very important to me, and I think to our society and future generations. And I hope also that we're able to continue the trend towards diversity and inclusion that we've I think, been doing better at than many societies around the world. And hopefully, just this little stop and have a breather does have the effect of making people realise our common humanity is pretty important, and that we should just respect one another a little bit more. They're quite simple things, but
Mm.
I think if we achieve that, and we have a comfortable, sustainable standard of living in New Zealand, we're going to be a long way ahead of the rest of the world. I fear
Mm.
much more for the rest of the world than I fear for here.
So two last very important questions. How long do you think the beard will be before you can go and enter a public space again?
Who knows? Look, it could come off at any moment, but I'm getting more used to it.
What's it? Are you still doing? Are you doing the virtual boot camps with Dave? How are you doing your fitness stuff now? What are you doing?
Uh, Look, I'm lucky enough to have a very small gym here, so I'm actually keeping up the workout level. But
Nice.
I feel awkward and clumsy in any physical activity with other people.
Okay.
Combining that and being on a screen is just beyond me. So I haven't really been a participant in online boot camps, but they're going remarkably
Yeah,
well,
you're
and
smashing it.
they're keeping a lot of people happier and saner than they would otherwise be. Particularly the number of kids that are participating is fantastic.
Yeah,
Really great to see.
it's on fire, eh? And you
Yeah.
still on the plant based shit? You still how's the diet rolling? Are you stuck at home with some good stuff, or has wifey got you on some homemade KFC little mashups?
No, nothing like that. No, completely on the plant-based diet
Yeah,
and loving it a
still,
bit. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
bro. I know you're tapped
We'll
for
we'll
time, so I
we'll
always
get you there.
appreciate it.
We'll
Oh,
we'll
mate,
drag you away from those steaks as big as Texas soon. Yeah.
America, mate. This is what happens. So yeah, appreciate your time, brother. Much love, and tell the crew I said what up, and I'll talk to you soon, my man.
Cheers, brother. Bye.
Shot, brother. Talk to you soon. Later, bro.
Thanks.
The bro Rob Campbell, just flipping chair of everything, weapon, boss dogger, but just above all, solid human and good Kiwi, and it's rad to get his insights. Even just the things talking about different verticals of how they think about tourism and retirement homes and you know flipping property, and also oh shit, I think he's still chair of Sky City as well, entertainment, all the sort of stuff. Big day, lots of good chats, good comments, good insights, good learnings, cool leadership, cool access and availability to other. Oh, Tim Alp says really enjoyed the interview. My man, Timbo. Alp's going to be in the mix, I think, tomorrow, Tim, maybe? Or I'll have to double check. It might be Thursday or Wednesday. Anyway, he's going to be on the show as well, talking about tourism, cool stuff, juicy, and whatever. This has been mega talking with. It's just cool catching. It's like catching up with mates, talking shit about what's up without getting into too much detail, but also the positivity around what potentially New Zealand can be. And there's always these recurring themes I keep thinking around. The strength and bravery of leadership, which is required to make the tough decisions to go on, from an employer side around general communication to try and make the business better because everyone's in the same boat. From and then at the top as well, with the weight of these heavy decisions and things that need to get made with how they do it, and the overwhelming consistency at the top around this is an opportunity for growth, this is an opportunity to redesign, reimagine, rethink, and actually do some stuff. So it's good. If you've got a thought, I've got a flipping mega list of crew who are still going to be coming up on the show. This is clearly becoming a thing, which I'm enjoying a lot of. If you've got other people that you think should be on the show, feel free to reach out. I've been dabbling around this idea of do we jump political and just go straight to try and get gnarly politicians in the mix? And I've asked a couple of them, still haven't had a reply. And I'm wondering if it's because there's clearly bigger fish to fry. So maybe I'm just going to push pause on that and wait till we come down from 4. There's clearly more priorities. But I would love insights from politicians to think about the speed of how they've operated in comparison to regular 9 to 5 day-to-day stuff has clearly been different than what's happened in this last 4 weeks and what potentially is going to be rolling out to the future. So always really good. Appreciate the time. I'm done and dusted. I think this is the most we've done today. We've done 6 back to back to back to back to back to back to back. Did the fam time before, after this, going to go home and peaced out. And I've just got a text message from my number one saying, you're looking healthier. Why, thanks. It's because I've been drinking more water in between the whiskies. I've been trying to get a bit more sleep in, and I've just getting my new normal of balance and routine sort of dialed, because obviously with the time zones now we've gone 5 hours ahead. So I'm in the States, I'm 5 hours ahead, and a few other little things which I've been dealing with. Nothing illegal, but yeah. And I've just got another message. Good chats. And okay, I'm not gonna say the next one. All right, love your work, team. I'll talk to you soon. Adios, deuces.